All right.
Yeah.
What's going on, family? Welcome to Shifting in the Process podcast. We are back for another episode. I am so excited for this episode because we have our first guest.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, babe.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, you are so welcome. Thanks for being on the podcast. I really do appreciate that.
Always.
The first episode talking about what is process and how to enjoy the process. And so today we're going to have a couple of questions for Kristen, and Kristen's going to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about herself before we jump into this episode. So go ahead and take the floor.
All right. What's up, guys? My name is Kristen. I'm super excited to be here. I love everything about Shifting in the Process, and you've probably already seen me kind of in the behind the scenes of things. So it is kind of different to be in front of the camera when I'm usually behind it, but I'm so excited. And a little bit about me, I own a couple of businesses. I'm a boutique owner, and then I also own a business where I help small businesses manage their social medias, build websites, and things of that nature. So I kind of have a lot going on at all times, which is why I think it's so great to actually step back and to recognize process and just kind of like get processes in my life, because I could be hectic, especially being an entrepreneur and kind of like managing your own life and managing other people, managing other things. So yeah, but I'm excited to talk with you guys today.
Yes, we're excited too. So I'm super excited for that, and I am super excited. And I know I say that a lot, but I'm super excited.
You're always super excited.
I'm super excited. Always super excited. Gotta be super excited.
But it got me super excited.
And that's how it has to be every single time. So let's jump into it. How has your process impacted your life? And how do you view process as a whole?
Those are great questions. So the first one first, how it's impacted my life. I would say that process has made me slow down and just kind of live in the moment more so. I feel like sometimes we can get so inundated with our tasks, what we have to do, who we have to show up for, who we have to be, and kind of forget the grand scheme of like what we're even doing here, and like what our calling is, what our purpose is, and how we're supposed to serve more so than like be served. And so process has definitely made me slow down and just kind of appreciate the journey more. I used to be very like, and I'm still working on this, but like very much so like a perfectionist. Like I kind of liked things like in their perfect order, but process has made me realize that like literally nothing is perfect but Jesus. And it's like, you know, we can attain and strive to live a life of excellence. However, like it can definitely sometimes be weighty, like if we're kind of like carrying it, you know. So process has allowed me to like release a lot of just like doubt, insecurity, mistakes, things that have happened, because I'm like, okay, cool, like everything is just a part of it. And I really liked what you talked about in episode 1 of just like how we can kind of like almost skip steps at times. And so when I was thinking about that, I was like, you know, like we can want to get somewhere, but literally not be prepared for where we're going. And process has literally made me like more so just think about preparing for where I'm going. And especially like appreciating where I am now, because I know that there was a point in time in my life where I wish I was where I am right now. And so like that's definitely helped me. And what's the second part of the question? You said how's it impacted me?
Yeah, and then so like what is your overall view of
process?
I
would say my overall view is just structure. And that is something that I do think is necessary in all like facets, in all areas of our life, because it allows us to see something as a plan and then attack it as such, you know. Like I feel like being in any type of process, because we talked about, of course, like business, life, family, relationships, like, you know, we have to see it definitely with some type of end goal. But I've always learned that like, what is it? A goal without a plan is just a dream, right? So process is the plan. Process is the part that like gets you to where you have to go and gets you to achieve the things that you want to achieve. And it allows you to, I don't know, just kind of like have a way to go. Like it gives you something to lean on. It gives you something to fall back on. And it's like how you kind of like correlated it to faith. It's like sometimes we don't see everything, right? But we are still required to take the steps. We're still required to take the first steps and move in faith. And so even in our process, there's movement required, there's action that's required to get where we want to go. But process just allows us to see it clearly, and then attack it as such. Yeah.
Just hearing your point of view on those things, I think it's really great to hear, especially for the people that are listening, just to have a different perspective, just to have, just a different voice, and explaining their process and how they view process, because everyone views process differently, but process is the exact same. And so it's never going to be different for anyone else. It's, the only thing that can be different is the situation that you're going through and the situation that you're overcoming.
Yeah.
That's the only difference, but process is the exact same thing. And I think that's so good that you implement process within your life, because process is always going to bring you back, because it is the solid foundation
for sure
that you build upon.
Yeah.
So when you build upon that, that's pretty much from there, you're pretty much on your way at that point, right? And so understanding what process is and understanding how critical process is very critical, because that is going to give you the leverage that someone else might not be using.
For sure.
And so we talk about resources, we talk about having more at our fingertips, and a lot of that is not even money. A lot of that is not even, books. A lot of that is just understanding process and understanding when God has you in a process, that God is your resource, God is your tool to direct you to where you need to go.
Yeah.
And so, for me, I never really relied on money. Now, money does help us, and money does help us do a lot of things, but money's never been just the number one thing in my life.
Yeah.
Now, I love having lots of money, of course, to be able to do things and buy stuff and just enjoy, great food.
It's
and
a resource.
Yeah, it's a resource.
Yeah.
But one of the main factors that was explained to me was, if you can understand and if you can sit in process and you can be disciplined within this process, that everything from that point on is going to be not necessarily a cakewalk, but it's going to be a little bit more easier to navigate. And that's where God comes in, because he's going to be in the center of that process for you, and he's going to navigate your businesses. He's going to navigate your choices. He's going to navigate your thoughts. He's going to navigate all those things that you may be struggling with, because again, we're not perfect. So, and I think to paint a perfect picture is kind of unrealistic.
For sure.
And so I don't like to analyze everything, but I also like to go back and just be realistic with myself.
Yeah. It kind of puts me in the mind of the principle of sowing and reaping, what you actually sow into the ground, whether it's good or bad, is what you'll get from that. So in your process, if you are actually aligning yourself with what is required of you, then you're going to receive, what is aligned with that.
Right.
It's just going to come no matter what, because that's principle. That's just what it is. And so you can call it what you want, you can call it karma, whatever, but sowing and reaping is a real thing, you know? And so putting that focus, putting that emphasis on the process, it just gives you a roadmap, and like you said, it's different in everyone's lives. Process means the same thing, but it could show up differently in your life, right? And just whatever area you're in, whatever career path you have, if it's in your family, if it's in your, again, relationships, schooling, whatever it is, there's processes that are required in each of those things. However, there's still an underlying requirement of us to adhere to it and kind of just pay attention to what it is and what's needed from us, and then how we can show up in our lives. Because then, like you said, God is going to do the rest, right? But we're called to do our part. And my dad says that all the time. We're just called to do our part. And so whatever that is in your process, just do your part. I feel process means accountability too, and just kind of holds you accountable to what your responsibilities are. And it gives you, again, something to just see visually and fall back on.
Yeah, no, that's great. And that's a great perspective and thoughts, and just knowledge overall. I think my pastor, she says it all the time as well, is that, we could pray for something, and we can ask God for something, but again, if we're not doing the work, then what is there necessary to expect? Not saying that God is not going to do anything or give you anything, because trust me, in my journey, God has given me a lot of things that I never did one thing for.
Yeah.
I never did anything to have that.
Yeah.
And he still gave that to me. So that's not saying that God's never going to give you anything, right? But always doing your part and always putting your best foot forward is always going to be the key to your success and to your personal growth, because no one can change you. The only person that can change you is yourself. And so I'm a testament to that. And there was a lot of process and still process within self-development within myself. And so I think that's a great key to a great point, to know that, to do your part, right? To don't expect anything to be handed to you. Just do your part, and everything else will follow. Like, I guess the time that I did follow, like I skipped steps, or like I just did things on my own and I did it for the wrong reasons, those were the moments that hindered my process and hindered the reward that was going to come, because I decided to do things on my own. I decided to make this commitment because I wanted this, I wanted more of this, and then it ended up not being the greatest thing ever. So that is very critical, and that's like, process has an impact when you let it go through you. I know Pastor says all the time, like, don't go through it, let it go through you. And what that means is, like, let everything go through you, because when you go through it yourself, that means you're just going through the motions. And so you never want to just go through the motions. You really want to let everything set in, soak in, and digest everything that you learn on a day-to-day basis. And I think that when you let things soak in, it's just like when you cook chicken, when you let all the seasonings and the grease and all that stuff soak in, it's really good. Like, fried chicken is really good. And I'm a big fan of that fried chicken too. So, like, that is one of the things that, like, that's a real example. Like, when you let things soak in, it's better than just baking it and taking it out of the oven just because you're hungry.
Right.
So for me, like, I feel like that is important, to just let process go through you and go through it and take your time and just learn and just take everything in and enjoy it. And I think that's what I talked about in the first episode, was like, enjoy it. Like, what necessarily, like why are we rushing things that don't need to be rushed?
I would say, like, the way that success is attained at the moment. First of all, success is relative, right? It looks different for everyone. Whatever your version of success is could look different from my version of success, could look different from your version of success. However, there's still a level of like what is it, sweat equity that's required, and so, like, that's, you don't get that by rushing it. Like, if you think about a workout, if you rush through a workout and you're done in 10 minutes, did you sweat? Like, not really. Like, did you actually, like, do some heavy lifting? Did you actually build your endurance? I think that's what the Bible says, like, run the race of endurance. Like, that's the long game, that's long term, right? And not necessarily something that is just so, just on the fly, like, super quick, right? But society's not talking about that right now. Like, everything is just so, like, instantaneously. We have access to the world at our fingertips. Like, that's kind of a scary thought when you think about, like, even where we're going. So I think it's good to, like, have these conversations to allow people to know that it's okay to take your time and to not feel rushed and to not feel pressured.
No, that was a really, really great point. So, like, the next question that I have for you is, how has process helped you in your transitions? What I mean by transitions, just the transitions that, like, you face, as far as, like, things that you had to adjust to, or things that you had to overcome, and, like, what does that look like, and, like, how did you navigate that?
Yeah, definitely going to God first, right? So just spending time in prayer, spending time in worship. I am a big, like, journaler, so I write down a lot of the things that God says to me, and I literally hold on to that. I like to date things too, just so I can remember and go back to it to say, like, hey, okay, this is how God responded, this is how he showed up, this is what has happened so far, these things are still pending. And just kind of reminding myself of, like, what the actual game plan is. Because sometimes we can make a plan, of course, but it could just look different, right? Like the steps could be different, the direction could look a little different. So I always try to remind myself of what God has already told me, what He has promised me, and then I bring that back to Him, and I'm like, okay, cool, like, yeah, the direction's changing, but how are we going to adjust to this? Like, how am I going to show up differently just so I can, meet its requirements? So I would say that's a really big thing. And then secondly, like, I kind of prepare my mind. So I talked about before of just like, sometimes we could have doubts, we could have insecurities, we could have fears, which are totally normal. But I prepare my mind to know that I can do anything. Like, I can do all things, right, through Christ. So um it's difficult sometimes because you do think about, like, just process is big. There's a lot of, like, big things that kind of go along with it, especially when you have large goals and you want to accomplish big things. But really making it so that it is attainable, right? Attainable on a daily basis. So if you have a really big goal of, just say you're trying to save $10,000 in a year, like, and you're going through the process of saving for something, you want to put a down payment on a house, whatever it is that you want to do, you break it down. What's the daily goal? What do you have to save a day? What do you have to save a week? What do you have to save a month? And then it allows you to just see it as attainable. And then you could, like, reach that goal even quicker. And so that's what I do. Like, when I go back in my transitions, I go back and I'm like, okay, what's the big goal? All right, cool. Like, now how can I break it down to reflect in my daily activities, my daily tasks, like what I have to do to actually show up. And what do they say, like, about the elephant? Like, how do you eat an elephant?
I don't know.
You don't know that? They're just saying, it was like, how do you, which is, I love elephants, so it's kind of sad, but it's like, how do you eat an elephant? It's like in chunks, like small bites or something like that. Like,
out of all animals,
it's an elephant. How do you eat an elephant in small bites?
It's okay. So, I like hippos, so.
You like hippos?
Yeah, my favorite animal. One of my favorite animals.
Is it really?
Yes.
Why? Okay, we'll get on that later.
It's cute.
Okay. But yeah, so like, it's just taking the goal and breaking it down. So when I go through transitions, like, that's like really what it looks like. So of course, going back to God, going back to the plan, and then if I have to make any adjustments, if something's changing, if something is shifting, then I, take that into account, and then I just make it attainable for what I have to do on a daily basis. And I kind of incorporate it. I feel like process has, like, in different transitions, it's definitely showed up in my consistency and my discipline, because sometimes there's such a structure that's needed. Like, we talk about it in business, but of course just in life as well, but there's structure that's needed in order to achieve the things that you want to achieve, right? So when your process sometimes changes, or when life throws things at you that are changing, you still have to have some constants in there, like something that you can, like, do that just keeps you on a routine, and it keeps you level-headed, and it keeps you just grounded, and like what you're still here to do and what you're still here to produce. So
yeah, no, that's really good. That's really good viewpoint, feedback for that question, because I feel like it's important for people to know steps, because without steps, there's nothing. It's just kind of like if you build something, right? There's instructions, there's steps of how to build a table. If you don't have those steps how to build a table, how are you gonna know what piece to put where? And so when you say, like, journaling, like, that's a really great step to write down your thoughts, write down what you're thinking, writing down your emotions, writing down, how you're feeling, writing down what God is telling you within the process for that next step. Because there's always that first step, and then there's going to be a couple extra steps after that within the process. And those steps are going to get you to where you need to go for that end goal, or for that final transition that is coming to an end, for that last step. And I think, talking with God and writing down in your journal, those are very critical things to do, because I feel like it's so important to write things down of how you feel, because then it's on paper. So you have a log of everything that you've written down, that you went through, and you can go back. So when this certain transition's over, you can go back and read everything that you wrote down within that process. And those are the things that are going to make you successful within the process as well, because you're documenting every single thing that you're going through on a day-to-day basis. Now, you might miss a day, you might not write something down because you feel like you might not need to, but it's good to have documentation to go back and look at, to see how far you have come, because that is your progress. That is your progress within your process. And so for me, steps, again, I don't analyze a lot of things, but like steps and things like that matter, because I feel like those are important. And just as like for me, I worship a lot. So I worship every day. And once I changed the way I worshiped and praised, my life started to shift within my process, because, my routine started to change. So that was one of the steps that I took, was like, okay, let me change my routine. Let me change the way I worship. Let me change my posture. Let me do these things, because these are the steps that are going to be critical enough for me to overcome what I need to overcome, and to get God closer, to get closer and closer to God within my process, because I never want to be in a process by myself.
Yeah.
Right? I never want to be in a process and not know the next step, and not know that I don't have any steps to take. Like, I like to be in a process and know, like, okay, I know I've taken these steps before, and every time I've taken these steps, the results have produced fruit. And so when that happens, it's like, why would I stop? Why would I reinvent the wheel I don't need to do that, right? Like, God is there. God is already structured and already has a blueprint on what he has already laid out for us. So let me follow that, because that is the results that I've seen that has produced fruit. And that is never, I've never really lacked anything, unless, it was on me. I can only blame myself if I was lacking something in an area. So I think that is really good. Steps are important. So that's why I wanted to ask that question, because I want them to know, like, hey, like, someone may not know, like, to journal, or they may know to journal, but they may not know anyone that does journal. So for you to talk about that is very important, because I never used to journal. I started journaling about a year ago, and that is a lifesaver.
Yeah, it's changed my life. I've been journaling for years, and I have multiple journals. If you need to make it cute, make it cute. Get your pens, get your, that's my thing. Yeah. And it's definitely just like, it really just allowed me to see what God has done over time. And I think, like, that's important in any process. Keep a track record, like, it could even be something like this. Sit down and do a video diary, right? But just keep a track record of what God is doing, because he's always moving. Like, he's always literally in the midst, and he is, he's doing great things at all times. So.
Yeah, he is. He really is. And I think process is, once you really know process, and the reason why I'm just so passionate about it, and I'm just someone that just takes process just to another level, is because it has helped my life. It has really helped my life. And it is people in my life that has seen me from my worst to my best. Process was the result, right? And it, like you were talking about, it has you slow down and really evaluate the situation.
Yeah.
And I think that's important within going through transitions, is evaluating that. Like, I remember when, my transition in February, where, like, I had to evaluate, right? Like, I wanted to panic. I wanted to, like, scatter. I wanted to do all these things, but, like, I had to evaluate the situation and take a step back and be like, hold up, wait. Like, this is what I prepared for. Like, these are the steps that I have written down that I need to take within this transition, because those steps correlated to this transition and helped me through that. So then I could see clearly, and again, like, have the clarity to, like, understand, like, okay, like, God got this. Like, let me soak in the process. Let me enjoy this process. Let me not worry. Let me not scatter, but let me take the right steps to have this process be successful. And I don't really believe necessarily in failure, but, like, let me not make mistakes within this process, so I don't lose out on what God has for me. Not that necessarily he wouldn't give it to me, but, like, I would rather I would rather have the big reward and not settle just for the reward itself. So like that was my takeaway within that transition, was like I journaled, I worshiped, I did things that I woke up early, like I did things that I necessarily sometimes did not feel like doing. Like it was like I would sometimes be like, oh, like I don't really want to turn on worship music right now. Like I want to listen to some like Little Baby or something. But it was like in that critical moment though, like I had to listen to worship because that is something that soothes me, and that just keeps me just centered, and I can really hear God, and I can really be at peace and have a clear mind by listening to that. So I had to have a clear mind. So like that is really good for those steps. And that is so good. Journaling, talking with God, and writing things down is a big takeaway for that one. So, so the next big question is, you said that you're going through a transition, right? Like you're going through a transition right now, another one, and process is gonna be involved within this transition. And so like the steps that you use within journaling and with writing things down in your last transitions, like those are the things you're going to use in this transition. So like we want to know exactly like what are like your takeaways so far within this transition? Like what are you expecting within this process, and like how are you handling it?
Good question. I would say my main takeaway so far is follow peace.
That's good.
Follow peace. I feel like wherever God is leading you, there will always be a sense of rest in it. As crazy and as chaotic as it can seem and be at times, like he still literally, he calms the waves of the storm, right? Like, and he can give you peace wherever he's taking you. And so that is like, I would say my biggest takeaway right now. Because I feel like I'm just like in the storm, but I still feel calm, like I still feel like I can rest in it. I can enjoy it. I can have fun. I can, ride the wave and kind of just take it as it comes. And that is like what I'm really enjoying right now. And I would say like what I'm expecting is just bigger and better, and it may look different actually. But I'm still expecting for my process to still bring, reward, still bring joy, still bring, prosperity, still bring just like, again, more peace, because you can never have too much peace, for real.
Right.
And so like I'm still expecting to grow. I'm still expecting to become better. I'm still expecting to show up more. And I'm still expecting for God to show up. And I think that like that's the biggest thing that I can hold on to right now. Because if it was really just me, and it would be over my head, it would seem like, right? It would seem like it would be way too big for me. But just, resting in it, allowing God to continue to move on my behalf. I feel like he is showing up for me in ways that I necessarily never would have thought. However, I know that they're actually better, and they're so like they're really in alignment with just how things have been going and how things have been like progressing, And so that is also like, I feel like when like it's God in the midst, and he's in the move, because I feel like if God is bringing you somewhere, if he is taking you on a transition, like he has already predestined where you're going, he's already set it up for you. He has prepared a place for you. And basically now like you're in preparation. Like I feel like I'm just in preparation right now. And one of the biggest things actually take away from Pastor is to, prepare for what you pray for, right? I feel like that's what process is, process is the preparation for what you're praying for. And so it's the manifestation of that. And so like you said, even like in worship, like we're already praising God in advance for what he's already done, because he's already done enough. He's brought us here, but what he is going to continue to do in our life and how he's going to continue to show up. And I'm just in such great like expectancy, and I'm just so grateful and thankful. I'm grateful to have you by my side, babe, because I feel like, making sure that you have people who are going to stand in the midst of the transition with you is important.
And who's gonna bring the best out of you too within that process, which y'all know.
100%, right?
You know
so
what I'm
like
saying?
he said, like he went through a transition, which was like kind of like when he had first started dating and stuff, and that was like,
yeah, that was a big one.
It was a big
one.
We
might touch on that. We might not, because I don't like people knowing my business. But.
Yeah, but like it was really big just to be alongside him and watch him go through that and grow through that and literally show up every day. Like it literally like made me fall even more in love with you, because I'm like, the way that he can handle transition is like sexy, like it is. And so I'm like, like that's really just amazing to see, like how he is confidently moving in this and like, again, resting in God. Like he's still praying, he's still worshiping, he's not feeling like something happened to him, but it happened for him, And I think like that's the biggest thing that I can take away also, is like nothing happens to us, it happens for us, right? So just understanding that like God is not a God that like goes tit for tat. Like we're the ones who are imperfect, we're the ones who fall short, like we're the ones who don't always live up to the expectation of which we should. But God has never changed. Like he has never failed. He will never fail. And he will always bring you to a point of completion. Like my favorite verse talks about how it's James chapter 1 verses 2-4, I think. But it's like, count it all joy when you face trials and temptations, knowing that the trying of your faith produces patience. But if you let patience have its perfect work, you'll be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. That is a promise, right? Like patience is a virtue. Patience is something that I feel like we could have a whole separate talk on. And like, because process also teaches you patience. It teaches you to, wait on things, wait on the promises of God. But perfect and complete, lacking nothing, like I rest in that, like, so I'm counting it joy when I face these tests and I face, what may be a trial, what may be a transition, however you kind of want to word it. But I just know that God will always see it through to the end. So my job is just to keep showing up, like every day. Keep showing up, keep praising, keep worshiping, keeping the course, keeping the promise at the forefront, and, never really letting myself get in the way of myself, because you can get in the way of yourself sometimes. So like, even like you said, like if I've ever lacked anything, it's my fault. Like I did that. God didn't do that. He still provided in my lack, but I didn't deserve that, like it wasn't him, it was me. So
no, yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
That's really good points. Really great takeaways on that. I liked the patience part, where process does teach you patience. Faith teaches you patience. The walk with Christ is patience, because things are, even the world, like you were talking about, like the world, like society, like paints this picture of like you put something in the microwave and it got to be done within a minute. Like those things, like I've never been so caught up in like the whole
overnight
rich
success,
to get quick, or quick to get rich, or whatever that saying is.
Get rich quick.
Scheme, whatever. Like my thing is, like when I build something, like I want it to last, and I want it to be sustainable, and like I want this is like everything that I build within myself, my structure within my faith. Like yes, we can have faith, but like you have to build upon that faith. You have to build upon the foundation. You have to build upon that, because
faith without works is dead. Okay.
If you necessarily don't work at that each and every day, like you could have faith in a situation, but I know in certain things that happen in my life where I thought I was equipped enough to overcome certain situations, but there was times where I made mistakes, or like I failed within that process. I failed big time because I went back and was trying to rely on myself. And so that's when like you want to build upon your faith, and you want to understand that, hey, this may take this long, but we're going to have expectation that it comes quicker, because God can expedite things
100%
within his time. But that comes within the process, though. That comes within understanding that, hey, we might have to walk around the whole lake, but if we want to get to that certain point, this is what we're going to do. We're not gonna cut corners. We're not gonna try to swim across the lake, because again, like, what happens if you just run out of breath, or like you just get tired? Now you're in the middle of the lake. Now what are you gonna do, right? And so like those are the things that like you want to think about, and also moving forward, like those are things that like you want to write down. Like you want to write down, like, what are you expecting? Like, what is it gonna be look like? Like, what does this look like to you? And like how does this look?
Use all your senses. How does it look? How does it feel? What does it smell like? What does it taste like?
Yeah, and
get into it.
And like just continue to be in it. Like, enjoy it. I can't express that enough, but enjoy it, because there's gonna be certain obstacles that are gonna come in, sometimes, because it's just life. But those are the moments where like you want to show up, because those are the moments where you want to defeat what the enemy thought he was going to do. And those are always great feelings for me, because I always want to conquer, I always want to overcome, and I always want to win, to shame the devil, and to know that like what God has given me, everything that I went through was worth it. And it was nothing bad that I went through. It was like everything that I went through, I enjoyed. It was hard. It was difficult, but I enjoyed it. And one, it helped me grow even more in my faith. Two, it made me stronger. Three, it made me have more patience. And four, it brought me more close to God. And that's what the enemy doesn't want you to do. And so for me, that is the most important thing, is that if I can get those three things out of process each and every time, that means I'm going to be stronger, I'm going to be wiser, I'm going to be more knowledgeable for any other thing that comes in my way, because I understand what it's going to take and how it's going to look the next time things come around. Because again, you want to be prepared, right? You want to have your armor on. You want to make sure that you're on level 10, because we already know that the enemy's going to try to attack us in any weak spot that we have that we may not notice. But that's why we work on those things, and we prepare, and we don't start things last minute. We don't, we're not late to things. We're early, and we show people that we're early. We're in preparation to get what we prayed for and what we're asking for within this process. So that's why, that is good takeaway with the patience part, and to pull out that scripture, because you guys can go into the Bible and read that scripture, write it on a sticky note, because patience is so important, and patience is something that I'm still working on, and right now. So yes, it's been a ride with patience for me, because I like to get things done, and even with myself, if I don't like something, or I'm just like I want it now type thing, I can get very impatient. And so that has never helped me. So I'm working on that, getting better at that. So we're progressing. We're progressing in the patience area for sure. So but that's great though. I think everything we talked about was great. So like, thank you for coming on the show, Shifting in the Process podcast, where we encourage you to maximize your full potential. So so we're so excited to see your the outcome and the reward that you're going to get in this transition, and we can't wait to have you back on the show to hear about the reward and things that you went through within the process, and what you took out of that process. So again, thank you.
For sure.
We appreciate you.
Thank you.
And we cannot wait to see you back on the next episode.
Yeah.
So make sure you guys be on the lookout for this episode, which is episode 2, and then also be on the lookout for episode 3. Make sure you subscribe to this channel down below. You click the link, and I'm telling you, you do not want to miss out on this, because this is going to change lives.
Yeah,
this is going to really change lives. This is going to change a lot of things, and I feel God moving within this podcast I feel him talking to me and being very intentional with me about things that we talk about on here and what we say. So thank you again. And again, thank you again for being on the show, babe. I appreciate you. Looking good and stuff. Okay. You
Thank
know.
you, babe. I love you.
I love you too. So, all right. We out.
Bye.
Peace.